Good morning. Wait, hold on. Am I in the morning? Yes.
Yes.
My time's so off. Yes. Good morning. Welcome to a very special Facebook Live. You're with JD. We're with Bel. You're with Dr. Joel Loh here for Mind Matters. It's a free clinic. Any question that you have regarding the mind, we will help you get through it. Dr. Joel Loh is here to provide his professional opinion. He is, of course, a clinical psychologist and director at the Mind Psychological Services and Training. Actually, Joel, if you don't mind me asking, can I get to my first question though? Because
Sure.
I have a personal Mind Matters question.
Fire away.
Is it okay to be angry at people who are not following social distancing and being too calm about things right now? Because we're not out of it yet, Is it okay for me to be slightly agitated?
Yeah, I think so, because your own personal safety is at stake here, your own health is at stake here, right? So I think it's okay to be agitated, but I think it's as a psychologist, right? It's always good to just think, be empathetic and understand where they're coming from, right? Perhaps they've been stuck at home for the longest time. This is the first time they've come out in like months, right? So they're just a bit excited and a bit not thinking as the right protocols that they should be following, right?
Yeah, but I go around saying social distancing. I go around saying.
Do you? Oh my god! People might
Because
report
some people are
you.
too close to me in the escalator. I'm like social distancing. I'm like, okay.
I think I need to get that hat, that social distancing
Yeah.
hat for you.
Or those balloons, those like rubber rings around him.
Yeah, rubber rings.
All right. Let's get serious here. All right, cool.
Yep.
Okay, let's get to our first question that we received on Facebook. Now, if you have any questions at all, you can just leave them in the comment down below and we will read them out for Dr. Joel right here, right now for him to answer. But these are the ones that we received on Facebook. From Rakesh, my 10-year-old has been acting very different. He used to be excited when his cousins 9 and 12 used to come over, but these days he just stay in his room and ignore them. Even my sister noticed it too and asked if we had said anything to him after her divorce. We didn't, but I'm just afraid that he might have overheard a conversation with my wife. When we asked him, he said he just didn't feel like playing with them. Is this normal? Should I just let this go? How do I get him to talk to us? So this boy stopped playing with the cousins, knowing that the cousins' dad has left the family, I guess. Yeah.
I think so a few questions I have in my head is, the first one is that, is this a once-off? Is it just that one time or the one situation where the child decided not to play with the cousins? Or is this like a repeating occurrence kind of thing, right? If it's a once-off and he may have overheard the uncle is leaving, for example, then maybe he's upset, he's trying to process his emotions. And as most young children, 10 years old, they often find it hard to express themselves. So they usually withdraw, or they're more behavioral in terms of how they express their emotions, right? So that's probably the first question I have. Is it a repeat occurrence or not? If it's a once-off, then I wouldn't be too worried. I'll probably wait and see what happens the next iteration, right? And if it happens again, then I'll be more concerned. If it doesn't, then it's okay. But if it's a repeat occurrence already, then I think it might be a good idea to sit down and just speak to him about the whole thing, about what's going on, right? People often think that 10 years old is a bit young, right? But actually, at that age, it's okay to have quite serious conversations with them, like especially about things like family members leaving, going, even things like, for example, someone who passes on, even that. It's okay to have that kind of conversations with them already, because they're at the cusp of understanding. They sort of kind of understand, but they sort of kind of can't make sense of it. So it's better to really talk to them and make sure that they understand the whole gamut of what's going on and what's happening. Yeah.
But I'm curious as to why he's withdrawing himself from his cousins who are not involved in this divorce per se,
I think now we can only speculate, because maybe he likes the uncle, right? The guy, the dad of the cousins who are leaving, for example. Maybe he likes him, right? Or maybe because maybe the uncle did something wrong, and then he's thinking, oh no, I like someone who did something wrong, right? Or maybe that the cousins, I don't want to be around my cousins, maybe because they'll be sad, and I can't handle that right now. So there are many possibilities here, like in the sense that we don't really know for a fact, right?
And there's also another thing that we might be not considering also, like sometimes parents, like when they argue, or even aunties, like let's say I'm with my wife, let's just say, and then we had a kid, And then we plonk him in the room, and then thinking he won't listen. Then we start talking really loudly, and then talking about other people. And then does that affect them?
Yeah, definitely. Because as kids, their level or the ability to process information is not like at full capacity yet. It's probably like at that age, 10 years old, it's probably about 60-70%. So what's going to happen is that they're going to hear stuff, whatever stuff that they're hearing, right? And they're going to process it within their capabilities. And everywhere where they don't understand or it doesn't make sense, they start filling in the blanks, right? So, for example, they hear the parents shouting or screaming, and they're saying things like, "Yeah lah, that fella lah." Let's say like, for example lah, that fella made some mistakes, that fella made the wrong decision. If the child doesn't know who that fella is, it's not unlikely, it's not impossible for him to substitute that fella for me. I did it. It's my fault. Right? My parents are angry about me, for example, lah, right? So because of that, lah, right? Even though it's not about them, they can interpret it as such because that's what they know, lah. That's the limit of their ability to process information. Obviously, this improves as they go older. I mean, like all of us, for example, we're adults. So when people say things, they say lah, whatever. That's your own pasal. I'm not gonna get myself involved, right? But as young children, we don't know. Ma. Our reality is just us and our parents, right? Our family members. So when we talk about things, then I'm likely to be involved, lah, right, so to speak, right?
So if this is an occurrence that has happened since the divorce, should Rakesh sit him down and just explain to him what has happened?
Yep.
In very simple terms, like
Right.
uncle has decided to move on and gone away, and he won't be back or something like that. What
Correct.
would your advice be for Rakesh?
So I think Bel, you give really good advice, right? So I think that's what he can do, right? So to dumb it down, the whole scenario, don't need to tell him the nitty-gritty details and all that, right? But just explain to them that sometimes people, when they're married, they can fall out of love, they can fight, and then sometimes they might decide to move on and leave, right? So really dumb it down to a point where the child is able to understand, and then allow him to ask questions. I think that's really important, right? I think it's a really good chance that he's got a lot of questions, ponderings, like why is this happening, what's going on, is everything going to change? Perhaps he's even thinking that, oh no, my cousins are never going to come anymore because now he's left me, I don't know what's going to happen to them, right? So giving him the opportunity to ask as many questions as he wants or he needs to is also going to be good, right? I think that's the first step, but if it continues on even after that, then we got to be more cautious, right? So maybe you might want to consider speaking to someone just in case. Or it's also sometimes could be this like super early onset puberty, like that sense, right? Sometimes that can happen as well. And sometimes teenagers begin to those emo stages, right? Where you don't want to talk to anybody and things like that. So maybe it's just an early start for him. That can also sometimes happen as well. So just have to keep an eye on and see what happens.
I'm also reading this note very, very carefully now. I'm just going through it, and could it be that we're overanalyzing this and thinking that it's about divorce, and maybe it's just that this kid never really liked the two cousins in the first place, but the parents actually thought that they did?
It's possible, right?
It's possible, yeah.
There's a lot of possibilities, right?
Yeah.
I guess we're just looking at likely scenarios. I have no idea. Yeah. Like I said, if it's a one-off occurrence, then it's fine, right? But if it's a repeat occurrence, then we want to be much more careful about it.
All right.
Okay. All right, let's move on to our next question. But before that, of course, if you have any questions at all about mental health issues or mental disorders, you can send them in right now on a comment section, or you can send it into our DG LITE line 016-510-8888 if you wish to remain anonymous. That is possible. Let's get to our next question, which we got from Facebook as well. This is from Erin. I'm 58 and never been married, and I take care of my mother, who is 80 this year. My father passed away 12 years ago. Recently, I noticed that she loses her temper very often and tells me that I am worthless. My older sisters are married and live with their husbands, one's in KK and the other one's in Singapore. So I am the only one with her, but she always tells me why I can't be like my sisters. I'm losing my patience with her, and I'm afraid that one day I will just leave and move away. Am I wrong to think this way?
Erin, I don't think it's wrong for you to think this way, right? I think even as children, even with family members, people that you love, we all have a limit to what we can take, right? I think if your mom is saying things like you're worthless, how come you can't be like your sisters, for example, and like actively antagonizing you that way, I think it's only fair for you to feel antagonized, to feel upset, to feel angry, to feel whatever that you're feeling. So I don't think it's wrong, right? But thinking of it from a larger perspective, right? I'm wondering if this is if this is your mom's way of calling out for help and assistance, right? It's not. I wouldn't. It's not not outside the realm of possibility that she's doing all this because she's worried about you, right? Because I'm sure that she's got a really clear idea of what stage of life she's in, as in your mom, right? So maybe she's worried that you can't take care of yourself, that you might need her or depend on her, rely on her, for example. Right? So maybe it's just this weird, awkward way of her pushing you so that you can move on, so that you don't depend on her. For example, I don't know, right? I think there's lots of possibilities here. I guess what I'm trying to say is that be upset, be angry, right? But after you're done, after you're done with that, have a conversation with her if you can, and try and understand where this anger is coming from your mom, right? I think you're doing amazing work, taking care of your mom for so many years. It's not easy, right? And I think you're doing really, really awesome in that regard. So I think if you can just spend a bit of time, talk to her, understand what's going on, then hopefully you can find some kind of amicable resolution from it in that sense. Yeah.
Now, I noticed that her mother is almost 80, who is 80 years old already, and only recently she loses her temper very often. Could it be a sign of like dementia or Alzheimer's developing as well?
It could be. Yeah, it could be that as well. So if the anger and all comes with other kind of deficits, so maybe like impaired movement or impaired memory, or the thinking processes are not as logical as they used to be, then they're more likely to be a neurological or mental health disorder, like that sense, right? But like I say, also, it could also be that she's lonely, she's worried, that could be another option as well. So I think once you're done being angry, Erin, and I think you should be angry, I think that's absolutely normal. Don't deny yourself those feelings, right? Try and spend time with mom and try and figure out what's going on. It could be like what Bel said, it could be early onset of, not early onset, but the onset of Parkinson's and dementia. And you want to check that out and make sure she gets the right treatment, right? If not, then it's more emotional, and that's something that hopefully you can address and see.
But let's say it's not any of those. Let's just say she's 80 years old and she is completely healthy, as healthy as she can be for an 80-year-old. And she might need some help, and then maybe she's just, as what you said, lashing out, and then is there, so it's not wrong to put her in a place where she can get help in a home, right? Is that a possibility? But she's completely healthy, but it's a mental issue, right? So is it possible?
It's not. Yeah, I think that's an option to consider, definitely, because I think sometimes when we think about putting the elderly at the homes, there's always this very, not always, but sometimes there's this negative stigma about it, right? Like we're abandoning our parents, or we're ditching them, we're not taking care of them. But I think it's also important for us to remember sometimes that as children, right, we can only provide so much care and support for our parents. That's it, right? Because I can take care of them physically, financially, medically, right?
Yeah.
But socially, that might not be something within my wheelhouse. I can't do that for my parents, right? Because what I like to talk about or enjoy, they might not enjoy doing, right? So there are some instances where you put the elderly into care facilities or homes, right, where they actually thrive, because then suddenly they are with like-minded people who are able to enjoy the same kind of activities that they do, and they have more social interaction, right? I think sometimes that social interaction part is a bit forgotten in that sense, right? The idea here is that if I take care of them physically, financially, medically, then everything is okay already. But that social aspect can be really detrimental as well, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure you guys have heard stories about where one partner passes away, and then the other partner just deteriorates really rapidly after that, because they lose that social support and love and care and concern, right? So I think that's something we sometimes forget about it as well. So in this case, perhaps, after Erin speaks to the mom and sees what's going on, if she's lonely, for example, then maybe putting in a home, or at least on a daily basis rather on a perpetual basis, right, could be a good idea, right? Just to make sure that she has the right social support and care.
But what happens if it keeps happening on and on, though? How? Because we've heard stories like after I speak to her, then after that she's fine again for a while. After that it happens again, and then it keeps happening over and over. Mentally, it must be a strain for Erin. What's the worst case scenario that could happen?
The worst thing I could imagine for them is that Erin completely snaps and what she says, I'm going to leave, I'm going to walk out, right? And I think that's going to be bad for everyone, because you kill 60 years of relationship there, right there. So, and again, I don't blame Erin at all, because it's never easy. Even though you love this person, right? She's your mom, right? Obviously you love her and you care about her deeply. But even then, also, we're all humans. We have our limits. And it's important to recognize when we've hit that limit and do something about it.
I think as Asians, we have this taboo of putting older folks in a home, a nursing home or a daycare home or something like that, because it's in our nature or it's in our culture to be taking care of older folks, like Confucius says, you have to take care of your parents, and that's it, until the day they breathe their last breath. And that's what we have to do. It feels like it's ingrained in us. So I don't know. From this question, I feel like maybe there's something deteriorating with in the mother's mental health. So that's why, I mean, if she's only complaining now, after taking care of the mom for past 80 years,
Correct. I think similar with the previous message that we got, I think there's lots of possibilities here that we need to explore and see. Best case scenario is just that the mom is lonely and anxious. Worst case scenario, it could be something medical, and then we need to get her treatment as soon as possible. But I think the most important here is that Erin, process your feelings, and then after that, try and figure out what's going on, or try and really do some sleuthing. Sorry, JD.
I mean, for us, right? I mean, we're all getting on already. We're all getting older. I'm in my 40s already, and sometimes you do have disagreements with your parents. All I'm trying to say is like maybe we're also not looking. I'm just thinking maybe because Erin is 58, she's never been married. Maybe we're not looking at the mom side of things also. Maybe there are some things that Erin is doing that's making the mom upset as well, isn't it?
Sure, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
But I think at the end of the day, speaking to Erin, because obviously there are too many parameters to control here, right?
True.
But speaking to Erin, I think that's the kind of direction we want to come from.
All right.
If
you have any questions on mental health, you can ask Dr. Joel right now on our free clinic for Mind Matters. You can just type them in the comment section down below and he will answer them for you. Let me just say a very good morning to Liz Hodges, who's joined us, as well as Prem Kumar. And Prem Kumar actually asked a pretty valid question. He actually said yesterday was another sad day for Bollywood with the passing of young budding actor Sushant Singh, who committed suicide at the age of 34. It's surprising that many people who appear normal outside but deep inside, there's something going on, Now everyone on Facebook is posting, call me if you need to speak out, but do many people who offer such help really available or ready to help out? I guess his question is like, okay, I have a buddy who's suicidal. Call me. But what do I say, to make him less suicidal?
So I think
or like, will I say the wrong thing and then push him off the edge,
Worse,
I think as long as you're not like malicious or egging someone on, right, which has happened in our history, unfortunately, right, then I think there's very little that you can say that can push someone over the edge, in that sense. I think in times like this, when you do take a call or you receive a call from a friend who is struggling, who is suffering, I think the best general rule of thumb is to just be available and show concern and care. I think you can never go wrong in that sense, right? Now, obviously, if you get agitated or pissed off or frustrated halfway through the conversation or get scared halfway through the conversation, then to answer that second half of Prem's question, then you're not ready for this kind of conversations with people. And in that instance, if that happens, then it's a good idea for you to have a few numbers at the back of your head, or not numbers, but just associations like Befrienders, for example, MMHA, Malaysian Mental Health Association, so that you can refer them to the right people if they need that help and you can't provide that kind of assistance. Also important to remember here is that as helpers, especially when you're not someone who's trained or certified or anything like that, right, the obligation to help it's a volunteer kind of thing. You're offering help, right? It's not like you are required to help. It's not like you have to help them. And that's important because there are instances where people really, really do want to help and they feel that they're obligated to help. And if something goes awry, then they get really impacted by that entire situation, right? And that's something we want to be really careful about as well, right? So that's why my rule of thumb usually when I talk to people is that help if you want to and help if you can. Don't feel that you have to help them, right? That's never an option in that sense.
Okay, but correct me if I'm wrong on this, Joel. Statistically, I mean, we've seen so many celebrities who have taken their own lives recently. Very, very successful ones. Anthony Bourdain, obviously. They don't seem like they need help. And these are the people who will probably be the last people to ask for help also in many
Correct.
cases.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
in this case, whenever anybody says anything on Facebook, like call me if you need to speak out and everything, how do you know if someone actually needs help? You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
they all always so happy, joy, you know?
Yeah. I think a lot of times when people do reach out for help, that means they are at, I wouldn't say all, but a lot of times, right, they're at the deciding stage, like they're trying to figure out what they want to do, right? That means they're still processing information. It's one of the options that they have, and they're afraid about it, and then they reach out for help, right? For everybody else that doesn't, it sometimes it really depends on the person themselves as well. Like, or like those stars like Robin Williams, for example, and anybody in the world. Like, I think it's so important to remember that they are actors first and foremost. They are celebrities. They're their personalities, like, in that sense, right? And they make a living out of showing people what people want to see, right? So especially in these kind of cases, it's going to be even easier for them, or even no, I won't say easier, but yeah, easier, I guess, for them to hide or cover up all these negative feelings and thoughts and suicidal thoughts that they might have, right? Because that's not what other people want to see, right? So I think that's why it's hard to detect. And honestly speaking, if someone is suicidal and they don't want other people to know about it, you're never going to know. Even you put me in front of them, so I wouldn't be able to tell, right?
Yeah.
Because you can masquerade and you can cover it up, which is scary, but it is what it is, unfortunately.
So there's
But we've all
if
had.
they're
Sorry,
if they're
Doc,
hell
go.
bent if they're hell bent on taking their own lives, there's nothing that there's no symptoms, or there's nothing that we can do about it.
You do sometimes see symptoms, like sometimes people, especially when it's really thought out and planned out, right? Sometimes these patients, these clients, might start doing preparations. So if you start seeing someone giving away all their worldly belongings, for example, like their property and things like that, or they start speaking a certain way, like it's very final in the way they have conversations with you, for example, it's like goodbye and leaving a legacy kind of thing, then there might be a question or two that pops in your head, right? And that's when it's a good time for you to just ask, hey, is everything all right? Is everything okay? Right? But honestly speaking, that's probably to the extent of what we can do, because like I said earlier on, if they don't want you to know, you're never going to know. You can't
Yeah.
find out. They're not going to be able to dig it out of them, so to speak. So I think looking out for these abnormalities in terms of their behaviors, like really sudden changes in the behaviors, like whether they socially or occupationally, for example, if let's say they love their jobs, right, all of a sudden they just suddenly quit their job and ask them what are you going to do. I don't know. We'll wait and see. It's a question that you raise. Like, maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's like a midlife crisis or something. Maybe yeah. Or but just be on the safe side. In these cases, we always want to be on the safe side, just in case. We just ask and see. Everything okay? Can I help out?
Actually, you know what?
You want to be careful.
We've all had dark days. Sometimes we just want somebody to talk to, and we don't know who might not, right? So, what are some of the words not to say when someone says, "I'm feeling a bit depressed"? Because a lot of times, what a regular person might say, "Just be happy, lah." That doesn't really work. That doesn't solve a problem.
Or the worst is like, yeah, it will
Go
go by,
away.
it will go
away.
away.
Yeah.
Just think
And then that
happy
makes it
thoughts, or
worse.
it's all in your head.
Yeah. What should we not? What should we say, or what should we not say?
So what we should not say is what you guys both said, lah. Don't belittle, don't wave away their problems and say, no, it's okay, lah. Or even worse still, you say, I was like that last week, but I'm okay now. See, it's fine. That's even worse. Right? Those things that you shouldn't say. I think the things that you should say is, sure, tell me about it, right? Or sure, let's go for a beer. Or you know what, I'm not in the good place right now. I'm going through a rough time at the moment as well. Here's a number you can call. Why don't let's all go out together as a big group and we can talk about things together, right? Not just one-on-one, because I'm not in the right place to say. So like I said earlier on, being available, being open, and just being there for them, that's the best thing you can do for the person, right? Don't just wave them off or brush them off so quickly.
All right. We are with Dr. Joel Low. Sorry, Bel. Go ahead. Yeah.
Sorry. Now, if they don't want to share, is it enough to just send them a text and say, you know what, I don't know what you're going through right now, but I am here for you and I care for you. If you feel like nobody in the world cares for you, I care for you. That's
brilliant, Bel. That's absolutely brilliant. If you know that someone is struggling, or you kind of suspect that someone is struggling, then send them a PM or a WhatsApp message. That's a brilliant thing to do, right?
Yeah.
So at the very least, they know that if all else fails, I have someone I can talk to, someone I can speak to, if I need to, in that sense, right? But I think, again, like I said earlier on, if you are able to do that and you're ready to do that, then by all means. If you can't, I probably tweak that message a little bit and say, look, if you're struggling and you need to help, let me know. I got people I know you can connect you with that you can speak
Yeah.
to, right?
And you can find
All
Dr. Joel Low at the Mind Psychological Services and Training. He's a clinical psychologist and director there. So
Thanks for the plug.
we'll give you all the contact details and everything. In fact,
Okay.
the only downside with him is that he supports a horrible football team. But anyway, that's a whole other side of things.
Let's just say hello to all our listeners who've just joined us. Cecilia, Chai, Carol, and Wendy. Good morning. If you have any questions at all about mental health or mental disorders, it doesn't even need to be something that you're experiencing. If you're just curious to find out, you can leave a comment for us and Dr. Joel will answer it straight away right here, right now. Let's get to one from our DG Light line. This one is from a mom of a fresh graduate. There's no name, so she preferred to remain anonymous. So I'm a mom of a fresh graduate. My son finished uni last year in October and has not been motivated to look for a job since then. And initially, I thought I'd let him have a month or two break, but then MCO happened, and now he's been just sitting at home for almost 1 year, jobless. And even after everyone in the family encouraged him to go look for a job, he doesn't seem to listen to us. He'll be asleep every day until 12 or 1 p.m., come out of his room, eat lunch, and then go back to his room and won't come out until dinner. I really don't know what to do with him anymore. I've stopped giving him allowance, but do I really need to kick him out of the house to get him to get a job? Wow.
Okay.
Long question there.
Yeah. And also something that is quite it's quite common. It's something that we hear quite a bit actually. This is a difficult situation to be in, right? Because I think on the one hand we really do want them to grow, to move on, to
be
progress
independent,
in
I
life.
guess.
Independent,
Yeah.
yes, correct. But on the other hand, we're also parents, right? And we want to make sure that we're able to take care of them. And if, I mean, yes, the thought of kicking him out of the house is going to be there, but realistically speaking, as a parent, it's not likely that it's something we're going to do quite so easily, like that sense, right? So from a psychological perspective, I think it's important that your son understands why he's doing what he's doing, right? Now, that's the ideal thing to achieve, right? But whether or not it's going to be easy to achieve, that's a different story, right? And the reason why I say that is because we do get this question quite a bit from parents, right? Who have the same kind of problems. Can I bring my son in? Can I bring my daughter in? Because they're struggling, they're not moving on. And usually the first question I ask them is, do they want to come in, right? And I say that because if they're not wanting to come in, you can force your child to come in, not an issue, right? You can tie them up and bring them to the office if you want to, you can. But ultimately what's going to happen is that we're going to spend an hour staring at one another, nothing's going to happen. And it's going to be detrimental for everybody, right? I've had parents who ask, can I trick them? I tell them, we're going to go for Baskin Robbins and then, ta-da, you're at the center, right?
They're grown adults.
Well, some people like ice cream, right? And
Surprise!
then I surprise them by seeing you, or maybe I'll buy the ice cream and bring them up to your center, right? You guys share it together. And I tell them the same thing as well. There's no point because the thing about psychology is that it can be effective. It is useful. It can help a lot of people. But it's important that you want to improve. You want to change, right? Because if that's the desire is not there, then no one can tell you anything that you want. You're not going to change. Like nothing's going to happen, right? In your case, I think what's the deciding factor for you now is what limits or what are you prepared to take on a mom, right? So, for example, if you are okay to continue this, then by all means, but making sure that your child knows that there are certain limits or boundaries that you are not going to cross, right? So, like you say, he's been home for a year, you cut off his allowance, and yet he still is comfortable, right? And maybe that's because he still gets two square meals a day. He's got a roof over his head. There's no rent to pay, no utilities. The internet is free. There's really no need for him to do anything outside of what he's doing right now. So maybe one of the boundaries that you might want to have for jobs is that, I'm going to do this for another 3 months and that's it, right? I'm going to expect you to start paying rent or pay for the utilities and house bills and whatnot. That's one option. A softer approach might be to have a chat with him and try and understand where he's coming from, what's going on, right? But that's often really hard for parents to do because ultimately you're a parent, right? There's so much baggage. There's 18, 20 years of baggage there already. Sometimes your children are not sometimes, but more often than not, your children are not going to want to open up to you, right? even as a therapist, sometimes when I talk to my parents, I'm like, do I really want to tell my mom that? No, I need to tell my dad that. Maybe not. Right? Even though it doesn't make any sense at all, right? But it is what it is, because there's so much baggage involved, right? So ideally, the best option would be for you to get him to speak to someone when he's ready and is willing to, in that sense. The third thing is to remain status quo, right? Because I also understand that as parents, it's hard for us to have the hard stance to say kick you out of the house or to cut off all your funding and things like that. And if that one is not something that you're willing to do now, then we wait for a while first and see where it goes. Sometimes people are just slow to warm. The engine takes a while to warm up and get ready. Right? So maybe it's
how many years though, Dr. Joel? Does he have to be unemployed? And I mean, it won't look good on his resume as well, and it'll make it harder for him to get employed further down the road.
Make a difference if the family is relatively well-to-do. Like if you see your family struggling, and then that kind of forces you to want to go to work, right? But if your family is well-to-do, is that one of the factors as well?
Correct. So that's why I'm saying the mom and the parents needs to decide what their limits are, right? If you want to give him 1 year holiday in that sense for him to find himself or to just relax, maybe college was super tough on him, maybe we don't know, right? Then that's what I'm willing to do. Then okay, I'll do that for my child. But after that, right? Then what are you going to do after that, right? So again, like what you say, JD, I mean, life circumstances might push us towards being more proactive in terms of finding a job or moving up, sure. And if you're really comfortable, then for what? There's no need for me to do that, right? So again,
like most of us, we weren't. We it's not like we wanted to go and then slog 9 to 5 and whatnot, but it's not that we had an option because at home times are tough. You need to go out, right? So do they need to be tough on their kids in a way?
Sometimes I think so, right? So you do need to set boundaries. So even though your kids are 25 or whatever it is, right? If they're still relying on you and they're still living off your dime and living under your roof, I don't see any wrong with you setting boundaries of house rules for them to follow because it's only fair, right? I can set that rules for 5-year-old, why not 25-year-old, right? So if it boils down to that, if let's say the caller's limit is 1 year, right? After a year, then you tell him, right, that's it, I need rent, right? I think that's not bad, or then that's not wrong at all. You're not being mean, put it that way, right? You're still being very functional and your intentions are good. You're trying to make sure that he is an independent, productive member of society, which is not a bad thing at all.
I like
do you blame society though?
Get him to first pay rent and then maybe utilities if he's playing video games in his room the whole entire day, right? If you don't pay for the internet.
I've seen those parents, right? They come in with a stick hammer, destroy the
I've seen
console
those.
Before.
Yeah.
You go and buy another one, that kind of thing. But that's a bit too harsh, is it? But I also have an issue here. Is it a cultural thing? I had a very partially Western upbringing, but very Asian as well. And in that sense, that means 21, you are out, right? Doesn't matter. You have to go out. You need to find a job. The flip side is Asians will look at it as like, oh, that's so mean. That means at the end of the day, they won't take care of you. But Westerners you take care of yourself, right? Is it a cultural problem here as well?
I think so. That's probably why the mom is finding it so hard to use the tough love or the more like hardline stance, that sense, which is totally understandable because that's how we were brought up. That's the culture we live in, right? But again, it's what you're able or willing to take, ultimately. For all you know, maybe he's earning thousands of dollars being a Twitch streamer. You never know, right? He will surprise you. It could be possible as well.
Okay. Or spending thousands of dollars buying things from video games, right? Oh,
that too. Have you guys seen the PS5 memes that are coming out?
Oh my god, yes.
So good.
Yes.
Brilliant.
Definitely getting that.
No, you weren't allowed to, JD, remember?
Oh, really?
My wife says, she's like, do you really need it though? And I'm like, I do. Yeah, suddenly became a child again. Right? Yeah, exactly. Yes, my psychologist says that it's for business purposes.
Thanks.
Okay, now if you've just joined us, this is the free clinic on Mind Matters with Dr. Joel Loh, who's a clinical psychologist at the Mind Psychological Services and Training. And if you have any questions at all about mental health issues or mental disorders, you can send them. You can actually just type them out on the comment section below, and we will answer it for you here and right now. We've also received some questions via our DG LITE line. So if you prefer to send them over on our DG LITE line, you can do so. You can WhatsApp us 016-510-8888. Now, here's another story, speaking of wife, that we got from our Facebook, from Wing Kyung. Doc, how to help my wife who is angry all the time.
Okay.
When I ask her what's wrong, she tells me nothing. I work, I come home, she's angry already. What do I do?
Whoa.
That's the very age-old question there.
All the time, though.
Yeah, correct.
Not all women are like that. There must be from a women's perspective, something is wrong, and you have to get to the bottom of it.
Correct. And it's possible if it's all the time, then it's something that's super long time coming kind of thing. It's been there forever, right? Wing Kyung, I honestly don't know if you're the right person to do it sometimes. Again, if you can sit down, have a conversation with your wife, and it sounds like you've tried before and they're not ready to speak about it yet, then it might be possible that you're not the one that is the one who can bring it out of her or draw it out of her, in that sense, right? So perhaps, either encouraging your wife to speak to a loved one, like a family member or a good friend, for example, or maybe even a counselor, right? Because sometimes, like again, similar to what I said just now, right? You've been married to your wife for X number of years. You have X number of years of baggage there already. Maybe you are the problem, right? It could be possible that as well. And if that's the case, then she's going to find it very hard to tell you that you're the problem because I don't want to be that bad person in the relationship, right? So if she has someone external to speak to, she can vent out all that steam, and when she's a bit more rational and calm, then she can come back and say, look, this is my issues, these are my concerns, these are the problems that I'm facing, and that's why I'm so upset all the time, right? Then it's a more constructive kind of conversation, right? So that's why I said maybe you're not the right one to do anything about it at the moment, right? So that's one thing to consider. I think another thing to consider is for you to reflect on your own and see that journey that you have with your wife so far. Is there anything that has been swept under the rug, something that was left unsaid, for example, or wrong that was forgotten? I mean, as guys, and speaking from most guys, not all guys, most guys' perspective, our memories for things are not the best in the world, right? Especially for the small, minor, relatively minor. My wife is going to kill me now, right? But relatively more minor things. And actually, there's a biological reason for it. I was watching this really interesting TED Talk, right? Because females, the amygdala is more functional. They do a lot more work than guys. So females tend to be more receptive emotionally, right? So they actually pair up their memories with the emotions as well. So that's why they can remember things better, especially emotionally charged things better than guys do. So perhaps it's something that you've forgotten, or it was a wrong thing that you did, or whatever it is, or something that was a gem unmet, even that, right? Maybe your wife has not been working for a while because she wanted to support your career, and now she's feeling, I lost out. I could have had X, Y, Z, B, C. It could be that as well. So explore a little bit introspectively and see whether there's something that you can do or something that you can change. And then see where we go from there. Yeah.
Now, when
Could
he says
it
all the
be the
time, was
go
it angry
ahead.
even before they got married? I wonder.
Maybe, it could be. It's not impossible. Right? Sometimes people
No, and on the flip side, I'm thinking, if she's angry, is the anger directly directed at him, or maybe she's angry at something else or someone else, and just
yeah.
you know,
you're absolutely right,
and
though.
she doesn't feel the need to vent it on him.
Correct. I think sometimes, as all relationships are not just with anybody in this world. I think one thing we sometimes forget is to be responsible for our own emotions, right? So that means, let's say our boss pisses us off, right? And I can't call my boss because it's my boss, right? And then when I go back home, I have all that pent up frustration and anger inside of me, right? Who's the closest person, or who's the most likely person to kena the leftover, or the residual anger that have family members, loved ones, children, parents, siblings, whatever you like, in that sense, right? And that happens because we're not responsible for our own emotions, right? If we can just come back home and tell our wife or kids, look, daddy had a really bad day, my boss shouted at me and I'm really angry right now. Give me an hour, give me half an hour, I'll go play on my PS5 for half an hour, and then I'll just calm down and relax. And then we can talk about things, right? And then that's how we can be responsible for our emotions. But oftentimes we don't. We come back frustrated. Someone does something to agitate us even more, and then boom, we explode. Right? So you're absolutely right, Bel. It could be that she's upset about other things, just that the husband is the convenient person there, in that sense, unfortunately.
Do people, just psychologically, physically, they're just born with shorter fuse, and then they need to go for anger management classes? Should she go, you think?
It's too early to say, lah, right? I mean, it is possible. It's not outside the realm of possibility. It could be that she has an anger management problem. It's really possible. Lah. But again, there's so many possibilities that you want to rule out first. And if you don't want to jump the gun, lah, right? I think the last thing you want to do is to tell a partner who is already angry, telling them that you've got anger management issues, you need anger management therapy. I think that's the worst thing you could do to your wife, right? Or husband for that matter. Yeah. So
Yeah.
It's the same thing as guys saying, "Is it your time of the month?" And then that makes them even more angry.
yes, my professional opinion
right.
is yes.
Okay.
Oh,
Let's not do
JD,
that, yeah.
JD.
I'm just wondering, because sometimes guys
You
say
always
stuff
know
like
how
that.
to light the fire. Yeah.
All right.
All right. Let's get to one of our
Poor
live
guy.
comments from Carol M. Balmas. I just want to ask Dr. Joel, my father is 88 years old. He's always forget something, like he would say, I didn't eat yet, even though he's just finished, and he forgot that he's old already. He always thinks that he's still young. And when his sisters come, he can remember everything when they're young, which is very much true. But his current situation, he doesn't really know, and he always thinks that he's still 50. Why is he like that? So
Yep. Carol, I think this one sounds a lot like the possibility of like Alzheimer's or dementia, lah, right? At least dementia, lah. Again, I've seen the possibility because I haven't met your good dad. I'm not sure. I can't diagnose him, right? But it's something that you definitely want to rule out. So bring him to hospital, for example, or your GP. I'm sure they'll be able to help you, point you in the right direction. To answer your question, it's possible that this is happening because his memory, or at least his ability to encode new memories, isn't as good as it used to be, right? So our memory, we've got short-term and long-term memory, right? So long-term memory is things that happened in the past, like what you had for your 5th birthday, the birth of our children, for example, when we got married. And short-term memory is what happens today, right? So like and I think it's quite telling here. She's saying that the dad forgets that he had his meal already and things like that, but you can remember what happened with the sisters when he was 50, for example. So I think that his memory is starting to be disrupted a little bit, especially his short-term memory and his ability to encode new memories, in that sense, right? So in terms of him being able to function, I think he's still going to be okay. He's still going to be able to take care of himself and all that, but he's going to be very forgetful. So I'll probably be very careful about getting him to do things like lock up after he comes back home from a walk, for example, or to make plans, like ask him to take a cab or a grab car to Moratama for dinner and things like that. Those are really kind of critical kind of things I'll be really careful about, just because his short-term memory doesn't seem to be functioning as well as it should, in that sense, right? But in terms of him taking care of himself, like every other day kind of thing, I think he should be okay. No issues there. Yeah. But going back to my earlier statement, I think it's a good idea to get him to a doctor just to check things out and see and make sure that it's nothing too serious, just in case.
But Doc, he's 88 years old. I'm just thinking out loud here because my grandma is 93 years old and she is forgetting things, right? And we just feel like she's at that age where she doesn't need to go see a doctor. Just let her be who she is, or what she wants to do. Let her do whatever she wants to do. Like she still goes out to do her morning walk every morning, and we're worried because, like, what if she cannot find her way home? But it's not something that I want to sort of cure off her, I guess. So is it even worth bringing the father over to see a psychologist and get medication for it and have some side effects from the medication?
To be fair, with this kind of situations, medication is going to do only so much, right? Again, I'm not a psychiatrist, so I can't tell for a fact, but from my knowledge, or at least from what I know, it's not going to do very much, but ultimately it's really up to the family to see. I mean, sometimes it's something that they want to consider. They want to try and give the person the best quality of life they can have, and that means getting them the treatment that they need to, right? In other instances, like in your example, Bel, let her live, let her do whatever she wants to do. It's fine, and that's also okay as well. I don't think there's any right or wrong answer here. I think it's really about what the mom or the dad wants, the loved one wants, and also what we want to provide for them, etc. I think only if it starts to deteriorate to a point where they are starting to not be able to take care of themselves, right? Then we have to put in some bit more active actions there. But if not, then as a family, decide what is it that you guys want to do, or how do you want to support this person, and then see where we go from there.
Wait, what do you mean by that, though, Joel? When they can't take care of themselves, like they
Um,
Can't control bodily functions and stuff.
yeah, that's one. That's
Or when they
one.
don't remember even themselves,
Right,
when that
right, right.
happens, when they
Yeah,
cannot even remember who you are,
yep.
or who they are, right?
Or even things like they don't eat because they keep thinking that they ate already, for example, and then they
Yeah.
accidentally starve themselves or they engorge themselves. They eat too much, right? Because they keep forgetting they've eaten already.
Mm.
So it gets to that point, then maybe we need to do something a bit more active.
Right. Okay.
All right. We're with Dr. Joel Low here for free clinic. I said flea. My Chinese came out. The Chinese in me came out. Flea clinic. The free clinic on Mind Matters. So if you have any mental health issues or any mental health questions at all to ask Dr. Joel, he's right here. Just send it in on our comment section below, and he will answer it here just for you. Now we received one on our DMs from Liz. What is PTSD and how does it affect people? My sister had a car accident 6 months ago and was in hospital for 3 days for a dislocated shoulder. Now she doesn't want to drive and keeps saying that it's PTSD. So I have to drive her everywhere. How can I help her drive again?
Okay. Good question. It's a very popular diagnosis in the sense that you see a lot in TV and media and movies and things like that, right? Alongside OCD and things like that. So PTSD stands for post-traumatic stress disorder, and this usually happens when someone encounters a situation that involves potential or already caused harm, right? So harm to self, so like car accident, for example, mugging, like someone trying to rob you, or rape attempt and things like that, or even if it's already happened, like you have been robbed, you have gotten a car accident, right? And it can also happen sometimes when it's information relayed to you. So let's say, for example, someone's telling you a story that they've encountered themselves and they were in danger and their life was in danger. That can also sometimes be the trigger for PTSD in you, right? Now, the thing about PTSD or the traits that we want to see in PTSD when we're trying to diagnose someone is, number one, is time, right? So if anything within a month of the incident, then it's not PTSD yet. It's something we call acute stress disorder, which is something that all of us will encounter. We get into a bad accident, we have a bad encounter with something, we're naturally just that much more careful and anxious about that situation. But after a month or so, it will taper down, right? If after a month it continues on, that's the first criteria for PTSD that we want to consider. Second one, for it to be PTSD true and true, there has to be this element of flashbacks, right? So by flashbacks, what I mean is that, let's say the stereotypical scenario for someone with PTSD is a war veteran, right? So they go to the war somewhere and they hear explosions, gunshots, and things like that. They come back to civilization or where the war isn't happening. They're walking along the streets and a car or motorcycle backfires. Excuse me. Sounds like gunshot. And then they start reliving the memories as if they were in the battle zone, right? So they reenact scenarios. They might even physically run for cover or start attacking people because they feel that they are under threat, right? Another variation of that is they're very vivid, very clear nightmares about the situation again, and similar again and again and again, right? So that's another big criteria that we want to look out for in PTSD, right? So in this, is it Mary? I think her name is
Liz.
Mary. Liz, sorry. So in this case, I think that's the few things we need to look out for. So time-wise, it kind of fits, right? But I think in terms of the severity of the flashback, that's something we want to consider, right? Now, I'm not belittling what the sister's gone through. I'm pretty sure if you've gone to the hospital for a dislocated shoulder for 3 days, it's not fun. It must have been a really bad accident, yeah? But I don't know whether it's a full-blown PTSD or not, right? Because we can be traumatized, we can be very anxious, we can even be phobic about things like that, right? Now, for it to be PTSD, it's a bit excessive potentially. I don't know. I haven't met the sister before. But just in case, you might want to get her checked out and see, right? Clinical psychologist, psychiatrist, just to make sure. Because if it's not, then great. Then we can develop certain mechanisms or training program protocols to try and reduce that fear to a point where she's able to drive on her own again, which is great, right? If it is PTSD, then there are treatment methods that we can try and do, like EMDR, for example. And that's so proven to be very effective to help people with PTSD. And then we can try and de-escalate the fear that way. And the main goal here is...
What does EMDR stand for?
It's EMDR, so it's England, Malaysia, Denmark, Russia. But I can never remember what it stands for. It stands for eye movement desensitization. I really can't remember, right?
Okay, all right.
But it's a variation of therapy. Like, it's not typical talk therapy, right?
Eye
If you-
movement desensitization and reprocessing.
Thank you, JD. I can never remember it for some reason.
Thank you, Google.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's a treatment method that has been proven to be quite useful for people who go through PTSD, lah, right? But make sure you go to someone who's certified and who has the right credentials to provide it. There are a few centers here in Malaysia that do that, so if you Google them, you can find them quite easily, lah, right? So yeah, if it is PTSD, then we get her the right treatment. And the idea here is that we get her back to functioning as optimum as we can, right? Obviously, the fear and anxiety of being in a car crash is still going to be there, but she can't completely rely on you forever, like, right? That's not feasible as well, like, right? So that's something to consider. Like, yeah.
Could it have developed into a phobia?
It's possible, yeah. It's very,
And would a phobia be easier to cure or to treat than PTSD?
Arguably, yes. But the thing about phobia sometimes also is because, like, so for in this case, because it's something that she can rely on other people to do. Like, I can get my sister to drive, I can get a Grab car, I can order food in, or I can order my groceries online or whatever it is, right? So it's easier for her to escape, right? Escape in the sense that she doesn't have to confront her fears, right? So in that instance, the phobia is harder to resolve itself, right? Versus it's something that I have to overcome, right? So then that's something that I'm forced to confront it. That's easy for me to challenge it, right? But generally speaking, PTSD is definitely harder because of the flashbacks, because of the recollections that can be very traumatic for the person, right? Those on its own, that's going to make it very hard for the treatment to take place. It can, but it just takes longer time in that sense. So technically, phobia should be easier.
But in this case, technically, if it's PTSD, you mentioned that the war veterans come back, they hear a car backfiring, they freak out. So that's a sound kind of thing. In this case, if she was in a car accident, technically if it's PTSD, the sight of a car should freak her out already, right?
No, being behind the wheel. I think being behind the wheel is freaking her out.
Right.
So
how
instead of
sorry, yeah.
No, go on.
No, so
I just
how do
think
you
that
treat this? Do you just show her like car crash videos and everything and see whether it really affects her that way or what?
Oh my gosh.
That's bad. That's not something you should do.
So how do you ascertain?
Yeah. So like what Bel is saying, I think when something happens to us, right, every one of us has our own perspectives on it, right? So like, for example, if we get fired from the job, right, some of us might think it's the end of the world. Some people might think it's an opportunity for us to pursue our dreams. Some people might think, I don't like the job anyway. I don't like the people there anyway. It's actually a good thing, right? So given a car crash, again, we don't know whether she was the driver or passenger, right? If she's the driver, then Bel is right. The fact that I'm in control and I don't know if I can be in control scares the living daylights out of me. That's where the fear comes from. Or maybe as a passenger, I was driven around by a Grab driver who I couldn't trust. So now I know my sister, I trust her, she's safe, so it's okay for me to go with her in that sense. So in answer to your question, your statement, JD, about watching the car crash videos.
I'm just saying, how do you figure it out?
Okay, so how do I put this in a completely nice way and I don't shoot myself in the foot here? So if let's say it's a phobia, it develops into a phobia, right? Part of the process of dealing with phobias is to create that fear ladder, right? So the worst one is driving on my own, right? Or scraping the wall for even that, right? That could be the worst one. So building down the ladder, you could start off with just taking like toy cars and just like banging them together, right? That's the first level. And then as you move up the level, one of the levels could include that, seeing maybe pictures or videos of non-fatal car crashes, just to help them process the emotions and the feelings that they have when they see it. And let's say if you were in it, how would it be like for you? So in their fear ladder, it could be part of it, right? But you just don't force feed the person non-stop feed of car crashes. That's going to be bad. It's to be done in a proper way, in that sense, right?
I thought might desensitize them. I don't know. Yeah.
There is this treatment method called flooding, when we flood the person with someone that they're afraid of, like with cockroaches. We are putting in a room full of cockroaches, like fear factor, that kind of thing, right? But again, it's got to be within reason. Car crashes, you can't flood the person with car crashes, right?
Yeah.
But if like dogs or cats or cockroaches, lizards, that one is more doable, so to speak, right?
All right. You just joined us. We're with Dr. Joel Loh, who is a clinical psychologist, and he's here answering any questions that you might have on mental health issues or mental disorders. Just leave your question at the comments below, and we'll ask the good doctor to answer it right here and now. You can also send it to our DG LITE line if you wish to remain anonymous. 016-510-8888. That's our WhatsApp number. And we have one more that we received from the DG LITE line. Doctor, I'm a 48-year-old male. Recently, while I was driving home from work, I had sudden tightening of the chest and difficulty breathing. I thought I was having a heart attack. I drove to the emergency department immediately, but after they ran all the tests, the doctor told me my heart was okay. He recommended that I see a psychiatrist because I might have experienced a panic attack. Are the symptoms similar? I've never experienced anything like this before. Why did it occur suddenly?
Yeah. So what the caller, the person, right, described, I think it's very typical of someone who goes through a first episode of a panic attack. Oftentimes, panic attacks are scary, right? So just to do a bit of psychoeducation here. Panic attack is basically a panic reaction, right? So that means when we are encountering something that scares us, our body naturally wants to prepare itself. So it's fight or flight, basically, right? So regardless of whether we want to run away or we want to fight off or fend off whatever it is that threatens us, our body needs to prepare. And how does it prepare? It prepares by getting the heart to beat faster so that there's more blood pumping through our organs. We might breathe a bit shallower as well because we want to make sure that we have enough oxygen to our system. Our hands and feet might get cold because it's drawing blood away from our extremities so that our heart and our stomach and our liver has as much blood as possible. We might start sweating as well, cold sweats, because we're trying to cool the body down in preparation for physical activity afterwards, right? All of this happens within seconds, right? So it's really intense, really fast and rapid, and it can be very, very scary, especially when doing something like driving and suddenly it's like I'm consumed by all these feelings that I have. Okay? And I say typical because it's also very common for my clients, for example, to have gone to the ER multiple times, seen a cardiologist multiple times, done ECGs and all that. Everything's all in the clear, right? And so again, it's a very normal process or experience that someone might have. Yeah? And I think if your doctor is saying go see a psychiatrist, then it's probably quite likely that you did have a panic attack. Yeah. So it's with panic attacks, there's good news, bad news, right? Good news is that it's a very normal experience, a very normal process for your body to go through, right? Because like I said, it's a fight or flight system, right? It's normal for you to go through it, right? So it's good in the sense that because it's normal, then there are really good, easy ways that we can do to combat it or manage it, right? So if you go online on YouTube, for example, look for things like deep breathing, PMR, and grounding exercises, for example. Those are really good ways, simple ways that you can help manage your panic attack symptoms, right? So for example, like I said, fight or flight, your mind perceives danger, your body reacts. When we do deep breathing, for example, we are calming our breathing down to a very slow, even pace. We are basically using our body to tell our mind, say, dude, everything's okay, don't worry about it, don't panic, everything's fine. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's the good news. The bad news is if you're having a panic attack, that means there is something that's weighing in your mind or stressing you out so much that your body and your mind perceives it as a genuine threat to you that you're reacting towards it, right? So then it might be important for you to do some introspection and try to figure out where the stresses in your life are. Maybe it's a traffic jam. Maybe after MCO, 3 months I don't have to drive, suddenly I have to face federal highway traffic jam again. Which is getting crazy, by the way. It's amazing. And that stresses you out. Maybe the thought of the MCO. Maybe you run a business and the numbers are horrible right now because of the restrictions and all that, and that's stressing you out, is worrying you, right? So I think that's the bad news. That there's something that's causing you so much stress and anxiety that you had a panic attack, and there's something that's worth discovering in that sense. Yeah.
Okay, but it occurred suddenly. And I think he wasn't expecting it. What are the differences between the symptoms of a heart attack and a panic attack, though? Like, if I get a panic attack and I call the ambulance thinking that it's a heart attack, how can I
similar
differentiate?
is it?
Yeah.
So whenever you're in doubt, right? So don't hesitate. Just call the ambulance just in case. Worst case scenario, it's nothing, right? So please always do that, right? So with the heart attack, I think there is a set of there's an acronym for it which I really can't remember at the moment, where there's some things that you notice like numbness in certain parts of your limbs and things like that. So that one you definitely look out for. I think it's actually okay. Again, I'm no medical doctor and I could be very, very wrong here, right? But I think the symptoms are quite different in the sense because with a panic attack or fight or flight system, right, or fight or flight being activated, you're getting hyped up to do more activity. You're getting ready to do more active, aggressive kind of activities, right? Versus a heart attack, your heart is seizing, your heart is slowing down or not functioning well, right? So the opposite should be happening as well. And instead, right, you should be seeing a decline in activity and your ability to do things, for example. And I think that's why Hollywood likes to depict heart attacks, people clutching their chest and then falling down, for example, right?
Yeah.
So again, don't quote me on the medical side, I think, because I'm not a medical doctor and I should know this better than I do right now, right? But I think the symptoms should be different. But again, whenever in doubt, please go seek medical assistance as soon as possible, just in case. You never know, right? You want to be safe, not sorry. In this caller's case, for example, I think given that you've been given all clear from the ER and doctor said it's okay, then it's likely they're having panic attacks rather than heart attacks, right? But again, check and see just to make sure, be careful.
So how common are panic attacks? Will everybody get it at least once in their life, or sometimes no one will ever get it at all?
No, potentially. I think any one of us can have a panic attack because it's a very normal, it's a very natural reaction for you for your body to want to preserve itself, to take care of itself, and not die or get hurt, in that sense, right? So it's actually quite easy for anyone with a panic attack, right? So like for all of us, for example, like JD, when you what's a big life event you went through? Proposing to your wife, for example, sitting for your final exams, first time you came on air,
I'm sure you had a panic attack when you were pranked that time. Remember?
Oh yeah. Okay.
You were pranked, and then there were gangsters trying to beat you up.
Yeah.
Nice. Oh, man.
Okay. But I don't know. It wasn't that I couldn't.
Your heart was.
I freaked out and I started swearing.
Yeah.
Right. Did you hear your heart beating? Did you hear it in your ears?
Yeah. Because
right?
I was fearing for my life, but it wasn't just out of the blue. It was like I saw things escalate, and I'm like, oh no, Okay.
I guess for us, we've experienced that before when we get shocked or when we are scared of something or when we're being followed or whatever. We get that panic feeling in our hearts.
Correct.
And but it's a bit difficult to think about it coming all of a sudden from no triggers,
So in both the examples, there was a clear trigger, right? In the caller's example, I think it's different because it's a built up, right? If this is one thing, then I can handle. It's two things I can handle. But all of a sudden, it's like 5-10 things come together. And then there's this subconscious awareness that I've got these 30 things to deal with when I get back home, or, something's bad going on at home, for example. And then that gradual build up, right? And that's the ninja part of panic attack sometimes. Like you just don't know when it's going to hit because your mind is processing, and then it just hits you like a hammer. Yeah. It's actually quite normal. Yeah, exactly. It's quite normal. I think any of us can be subject to a panic attack at any time. It's not a bad thing. It's just something we need to deal with.
Oh, it's like I think when Bayern Munich fans thought that they were going to win, and then suddenly Man United scored 2 and then they lost. Then everybody would have a panic attack.
All right. I don't know why we must always end with some football talk, but anyways, this is all the time we have today for our free clinic. Thank you so much, Dr. Joel Loh, for joining us today. And thank you for all your answers.
Yeah, you can still get all this eventually when we play all this out. It's going to be on the Shock app. Download the Shock app. You can get everything there. And if you need help, Dr. Joel Loh mentioned earlier, get in touch with him. You can find him at the Mind Psychological Services and Training, and he's the director there.
Yep, thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for everyone.